Thank you very much, everyone. Let's first acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands upon which we find ourselves this afternoon. Let's acknowledge our gratitude that we share this land, acknowledge our sorrow for the cost of that sharing, and our hope that we can move to a place of justice and partnership together. I am delighted to welcome you all here this afternoon, and I'm very pleased to introduce two great educators, Gemma Thomson, Dean of Mission and Catholic Identity at Iona Presentation College, Mosman Park in Western Australia, and Ruth Bakogianis, Ruth, a teacher and social justice leader at St Mary of the Angels Secondary School in Nathalia, Victoria. Both Gemma and Ruth embody the vision of their individual schools. Gemma and ACRATH's Joan Kennedy work closely together in the bringing to life of Iona's century of presentation ethos, inspiring a strong sense of service and justice for all. Ruth is inspired by the Franciscan values of inclusivity, social justice, and right relationship with creation. Both teachers assist their students to live the gospel, to be informed of Catholic social teaching and take action for those in need in their communities. Today, Ruth and Gemma speak with Cindy Bohan about how their schools are integrating social justice and human trafficking in particular into their curriculum and broader school culture, and the role that their students take in leading justice works at school and in life. Thank you very much, everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is very exciting, and it's been such a fun thing to plan. Gemma and Ruth, I don't know whether it's fun for you, but thank you. Thanks for coming. I guess as a way of introduction, I'm going to ask each of you to take us through the school's founders. Like, as Marg said, Gemma, Iona College, Robin Miller, I think she's the principal, or was on the welcome sheet. She talks of the presentation story. How important is that to you, but also to the whole school when we consider social justice and the work that's going on there?
I will just put a disclaimer, and if the school bell goes off, I will just go on to mute because it's quite loud. But I guess in terms of the presentation story, I'd consider myself a part of that tapestry, being an old Iona girl myself. So I actually went to Iona Presentation College as a student and am now obviously back as a staff member in my 6th year. But I guess have been connected with Presentation Sisters for over 20 years, and I'm also really blessed to be the Presentation Sisters Justice Contact for Western Australia. So I guess in terms of the story, for us, we think about at the college that it was started as a school for the poor, and particularly for sisters coming to Western Australia and Australian sisters joining in terms of serving Aboriginal people. So we've always, I guess, had a real sense of justice and service right from the very beginning, 115 years this year. So that has been something that's been intentionally permeated over time. And I think when we think about our founders, Venerable Nano Nagel, she was all about caring for those on the margins. She was a visionary woman with great zeal and great bold, a bold nature to actually advocate for change, to stand up to the authorities when she needed to, but to be a woman of great faith. So when we talk about gospel teachings and Catholic social teachings, that very much underpinned her work. So I guess in presentation story, we're trying to continue that today.
Wow, I love the word bold. Thanks, Gemma. And you can see your enthusiasm when you talk about it. It's fantastic. And Ruth, I looked at a job advertisement. I'm not going to apply. It's too hard for me in schools now. But the commitment statement, the Franciscan values of inclusivity, social justice, and right relations with creation. As Marg said, she introduced you that way. Can you tell us about the Franciscans and how they still influence the culture of Our Ladies, but also that whole social justice? How, could you share your thoughts on that?
So the Franciscans have been in Nathalia since the 1960s, when the bishop put out a call for an order to come, and because there was no Catholic education in the area, we have an amazing photo in the old convent of the nuns in full habit under the blazing sun with the shovels in hand, digging the trenches for the convent, to begin. And the bravery of those women, none of them were Australian, they came out from Ireland and England on the ship, and the bravery of those women to undertake that journey. And I remember Sister Carmel Spratt, who I've been in Nathalia for 30 years, and I remember Sister Carmel Spratt, who was the FMDM sister when I was there and whose social justice I inherited, whose legacy I inherited, saying to me that one day she said to the nuns, I'm going, in a very Irish accent, she was going for a drive to find some hills because it's so flat where we live in the Goulburn Valley, and she was just over the flatness. But yes, they were absolutely remarkable women. And they still, Sister Carmel is still, she's back in Ireland now after a stint in Rome, and she still keeps very close contact with the school. Any of our staff who ever travel overseas, they always make a point of visiting her, and she regularly sends us messages of love and support. And yes, I was very fortunate to inherit her incredible legacy of, and the woman who followed her, Teresa Tinkler, she was remarkable as well. And I was just lucky to inherit that culture, which I think is very special.
A lot of people on the screen, Ruth, are nodding. They've got sort of an image or they've experienced themselves. So thank you. I guess I didn't know how to start. Like, that's a good start. But I was wondering, the human face, we often talk about, to affect some sort of change, people need to connect with the humans. And I guess ACRATH's wondering, as is something about, how do you tackle human trafficking when it is just hideous? And you don't want young people to know that the world is a shocking place, because we believe that the world is a good place, but there's just some shocking acts happening to people. So either one of you first and then the other one. But how do you, I suppose, present or share the human face of trafficking, whether it's the victim survivor or whether it's the perpetrators? Ruth, I'm aware Gemma's on mute because of the bell. So Ruth, do you want to say something first around that, and then Gemma dive in? Thank you.
Yes, when it comes to inspiring teenagers, you need the power of the personal story. It's just so important. You can talk about every charity under the sun and the work they do, but unless you can actually connect teenagers to the personal story. Many years ago, we had some Korean refugees come over to our school and talk about growing up in the Thai border camps, you know, where they fled, where they were basically born there. And their stories, you could just see our students realising that actually these teenagers are not that different to them. You know, they all wanted the same thing. They wanted a safe house to live in, and they wanted to play sport, and they wanted a good education. And so it's breaking down those barriers. When it comes to human trafficking, I think quite a few of our students are aware, because we live in the Goulburn Valley Fruit Bowl, and so a lot of them are aware of the workers that come in to pick fruit and vegetables, and the exploitation that is possible of those people. But at the same time, they see the farmers desperate for workers, so they see, you know, and there's all those conflicting, well, not conflicting, but parallel stories, and so. You have to tread gently when you work with students on those sorts of issues.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And Gemma, your thoughts on that?
I agree with what Ruth has said. I guess one of the other things I would always do with the students is set the parameters for that storytelling, because obviously you don't know who's sitting in front of you, and you don't know the connections that you've got with the students. You might think you know the students, and there might be some other things going on for them. So I guess it's always, as we would as good educators, you know, talk to them about, you know, what they might be hearing and how it makes them feel, and those kind of things first. And I guess the other thing too, in terms of the story, there's different ways that can be conveyed, and sometimes it might be, you know, a verbal story, sometimes it might be a written piece, whatever the methodology of it. But sometimes even just getting them to kind of sit with their feet on the ground and their hands on the table, and just get them to close their eyes and shut out everything that's going on, and just imagine it, okay, and read them a story. And then at the end, and say, okay, this was your situation. How do you think you could respond? So that idea of visualization can be a really powerful way, given that sometimes imagery and things like that is challenging. But I guess the other thing is storytelling in a supported environment. And sometimes I think if you've got a bigger group of students, having other people present, so one person's leading the discussion or the story or whatever it is, but then having someone else with eyes on the students as well is very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. So some practical suggestions for us on the screen. So thank you. And Gemma, we'll stay with you for a minute. Thinking of the students, do you want to share and skite about your students? What's something you're really proud of that they've done around this work, like following the social justice and the, you know, presentations and everything that you've been talking about? What's something that the students have led or participated in to change the world?
Well, I guess the most recent thing that comes to mind is last term we had some of our ACRATH WA members that are present today come and present some workshops with our students. So each term we have a service focus. So we have several co-curricular groups that the girls attend at lunchtime, and one of them we call Young Prezzies, which again connects us back to our story. And each term there's a focus, and we discuss that with the students, and we talk about different issues in our world. So we kind of focus on it for about 10 weeks, and then we'll rotate through. So last term we decided to, I guess, focus on both human trafficking and modern slavery. And so I broke up the 10 weeks into kind of 3 key parts: that young Christian students' approach of See, Judge, Act. And so the first couple of weeks is getting the students informed, identifying what their current knowledge is, getting them thinking and listening. And that's where the workshops with our ACRATH WA members came in. They were actually physically came in, told some stories, shared some information, did some activities with the girls. And then I guess we moved into the reflect stage, where we had 2 lunch times to kind of go over and, I guess, in small groups and a bigger whole group, discuss what we'd heard, how it made us feel, what we'd learned, what do we want to change about it, all of those kind of things. And then as a result, the students then decide, okay, well, we've seen all of this and we've heard all of this. What can we do in a 4-week period about it? So of course they go with these big grand scale ideas, and then they realize that in 4 weeks they can only do a small amount of things. So they looked at different advocacy and fundraising approaches to assisting with supporting ACRATH's work, I guess. So they, I think they organised a bake sale for one. They did little lolly bags with ACRATH cards inside about human trafficking. They did some posters. Some of them preferred to write prayers. So I very much leave them choose what they would like to do, because I find they engage more, and trying to keep the projects within a decent time frame so that they don't kind of get over it, because the young people sometimes don't want to go on and on and on about something. So I do rotate it through each year as a topic so that I'm trying to capture the students but approach it slightly differently. So I guess the See, Judge, Act, it works well, and it's student-led. Then I'm not telling them what they should be doing, which hopefully inspires them.
Thank you, Gemma. It obviously does, because we hear a lot about what's going on, and it's lovely to see your relationship with WA ACRATH, and I can see, saw them on the screen. I can't right now. So thank you. Now, Ruth, what about your students? What have they led, and what's something that, you know, really highlights and raises awareness for not just the social justice leaders, but your whole school, your whole community?
So our social justice group is purely and utterly voluntary. Our students do everything out of their class time. You know, the RE, the religious education program, obviously focuses at different times on social justice, but the students that I lead, it's extracurricular, basically. And because our school is a regional school and students are bussed in from up to 100 kilometres away, we don't have any after school time because they can't get home. So we have to do everything within a very short school day. So each year we have 1 or 2 or 3, depending on how passionate they are, senior students who step up to ask to be leaders of our social justice group. They go through an interview process, and then they basically, you know, along with me supporting them, are the drivers for the year. So we have particular things that we support. So first term is always Project Compassion and Caritas. You know, there's World Refugee Day. There's different, you know, human trafficking is part of that, and it very much. But then on top of all of what we do every year, the students are free to choose something that they're really passionate about. And this year it was the fast fashion industry. They came to me and said, can we do a campaign on the fast fashion industry? And that's always the one that's so much more powerful when it's led by the students, inspired by them, and they're really passionate about it. So that was the one, Cindy, that you came up and had a look at how we went. And, you know, as Gemma was saying, you know, they start off and the idea is so huge, you know, and then we had to sort of break it down and say, well, if we go down the whole sustainability side of fast fashion, that's just going to turn it into something enormous. So we'll just go with, you know, looking at how we as individuals can make better choices and just researching. And we did, one of the things they decided to do was a quiz. So we had a whole school assembly online, and all the students were in home groups, and they had to, you know, click the button on what they thought the correct answer was. And, you know, would you be prepared to pay more money for something, for a T-shirt that was, you know, made using paying people living wages? And it was the lack of knowledge out there was what ours, you know, because obviously the students who care about this stuff know a reasonable amount about it. And, you know, we were all quite not shocked, but it was educative for us on how little so many of the students in our community and even the teachers actually knew about the fashion industry. So yeah, they ran it from go to woe, including some fundraising for ACRATH and the whole kit and caboodle. But it you know, it needs to be short and sharp. It was sort of a 2 weeks done and dusted, but everything was done in lunch times in their free periods.
Wow.
It was all their time. Yep.
Wow. Ruth, that day that I visited, the students were leading a letter writing campaign to companies, and the thing I noticed was Matt, the principal, was there. How important is that to have leadership support, or what enables this work to happen? I suppose that's directed to Ruth, but then Gemma, could you add as well? What enables this sort of work to happen in a school?
Yeah, look, I have a very supportive executive, very, very lucky. And, you know, the school now runs a pilgrimage to Assisi each year. And, you know, they've met up with Sister Carmel Spratt. And I think that helps our executive, you know, and our staff stay grounded in the Franciscan tradition. And yeah, it's one of those, you know, when it comes to, you know, everybody's happy to raise money for the local viddies, for the homeless. But when you start doing things like refugee advocacy and that sort of thing, it can get a little more political and divisive. And so to be backed up by our principal, you know, we have a school Facebook page, and, you know, there has been times when people have written, you know, people often they're not in the community. We work out later that they're just, you know, trolls. But, you know, we have to have all of that in place, and we have to have an executive who's prepared to say, no, this is our Catholic social teaching. This is what is right. And we're going to back our social justice students and staff all the way. So it's absolutely critical to have that. Yeah.
It's the bold, you know, it's like Gemma, I think you introduced it and said the school was set up by bold. You know, so getting back to that, it's such a great word. Gemma?
Yeah, I guess similar to Ruth, I'm really fortunate to have a very supportive executive, and also someone that, you know, in terms of executive that's willing to listen. And sometimes when you go in there as educators with social justice initiatives, people think you're a bit crazy sometimes, and you do have to be bold and say, this will work, let me have a go. And I think that concept of having a go and knowing that your leadership team will support you and be present and also affirm the work of the students involved, I think that's really important. And it's nice for them to say, like the principal to pop in and say, girls, you're doing amazing things. And I guess the other thing from, you know, from that support kind of thing, our girls have, you know, I guess their introduction to ACRATH was through one of our sisters. And then as a result, like I know Heather's on the call, and Heather went to Iona as well. And so there's this chain of command of, you know, Sister Lucy to Heather to me and they kind of go, we know you're all involved and we know you're all committed. So that role modeling has been really important. So supportive executive, but also, and I'm sure with Ruth as well, they would see Ruth as someone who practices what she preaches. So I think that's so important to stand with the students. So yeah, when there's the online trolls on Facebook or where there's tricky situations, to know the students know that you're there standing with them as well as a staff member is really important.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that actually, but the kids would also get affronted if there is something on the Facebook or on the socials. Yeah, thanks. Thank you. I guess if there's new people like people who are about to dive in to tackling human trafficking in a school, or some form of, something that might be controversial, what advice would you give them? Like, I suppose, what advice do you take on every day? But also, what advice would you give them in a school who's maybe sitting in the room now, or a community group?
My advice would be to find the students who are passionate about it and let them lead. It's so much, students will listen to their peers in a way they will not listen to teachers. So if you can find the students who and often they're from families who've instilled that in them from the time they were young, but it's just so much more powerful coming from the students. I had one mother laughingly say to me the other day, she was walking along the street with her daughter and they were going to go into a particular shop, and the daughter said, "No, Mum, we're not going in there anymore. I learned with Mrs. B that you can't shop there." And, I said to her, "Oh, look, I'm so sorry." And she said, "Oh, no, it's fantastic." She said, "I love it." And so, it's the students leading it rather than they always need help with the organisation. They always need help with, well, maybe we won't say it that way, maybe we'll say it this way, or they always need, they can't do it alone, but to have them as the ones who are actually driving it. I always say to the students when I'm interviewing them for the social justice leadership position, I say a good year is when the students are nagging me. "Mrs. B, you haven't done this. You haven't put this on the school newsletter. We can't write on the staff notices, Mrs. B. You need to put this up." That's a good year. If I'm chasing them and saying we need to do this, this, and this for this campaign, that's not a good year. So yes, it's coming from them.
Thank you, Ruth. Yep. Gemma, what advice would you give people in the on the screen?
I guess one of the things sometimes when you're starting off, it's my first piece of advice would be to get educated yourself, because I think that's a really important part of the puzzle, is seeking opportunities like today, websites, conversations, reading, things that are happening locally to build your basis of human trafficking, of modern slavery, of the work of ACRATH in particular. And then also, I guess, one of the things, if you're looking at working in a school or community organisation, life is busy. So I think my advice also would be to have a loose plan of how you're going to address this, whether it's in a community organisation or a school. Like, for example, with the students, I plan roughly what the term looks like and then allow the ebbs and flows for them to have their input and to lead things. But it just means that it's not ad hoc, it's actually then going to flow through that See, Judge, Act process. So I guess a bit of getting educated, getting informed, planning, but also, again, finding like-minded people that you can reach out to. So there's people on this screen that I talk to regularly via email, or I've got a question about this, or I've seen this. And so I think, that's another thing. And then as a result, you make new connections. So that's also wonderful. And then people will come to you. So it builds a little network of people that are like-minded like you.
When people in schools reach out to people in the office or any of our supporters, I think what helps us is we're sitting in an office, me in Albert Park, I forget what it's like in a school, and yet my heart's in school. So it's actually really good. It's not, please feel comfortable, and anyone on the screen, please feel comfortable, because we learn a lot by your reaching out to us. So thank you. I guess a challenge. We've got people here who are up for a challenge. Any challenge to anyone on here? Gemma, do you want to start? Is there a challenge to ACRATH or to supporters?
Oh, that's a tough question, Cindy. I think that I guess for me, there's kind of two key things, is looking at the continuity of ACRATH moving forward. I think that's an obvious challenge, is speaking and spreading the word about the work of ACRATH and allowing people to see that they can be involved in various capacities. So one of the things, I've done with the students here is started to have that conversation with them about, as they get into year 11, 12. So girls, this might be something you want to continue when you finish school. And it might be a bit of a flexible arrangement, or you might only be able to be partake by email or whatever it is. But I guess having that awareness and understanding of how to keep connected with with the work of ACRATH beyond school. So I guess the challenge is for all of us is to identify people that you're going hunting for people, but identify people that express an interest, and avail them to the different resources or the different people or connections, so that they then, I guess it plants a seed with them is, oh, I might know someone that would want to continue, because it's such a fabulous group of people with a very important mission, and you'd want to think about how we can continue this for many years to come.
Thank you. Yeah, great challenge. Thank you. Ruth, any thoughts from Yorta country?
Look, as Gemma said, schools are incredibly busy places. I'm actually bizarrely the senior maths teacher on top of social justice. So resources are, always the thing. And in this day of YouTube and everything, they have to be short and sharp and usable. And so often, the students want to run a campaign on something. And so you dive into the rabbit hole of resources, and it can take 40 minutes in a day that I just don't have 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So, somewhere like ACRATH is fantastic, but even them, even though they are doing so much for schools, sometimes it's sorting it out. And then sometimes if I have time, I'll do a PowerPoint and I'll send it to the Catholic Education Office Sandhurst Justice Group, and they'll say, oh, this is amazing, can we share it? And I think, yes, but it'd be really great if somebody else was making this and not me. So yes, those short, sharp, a quick personal story from someone who's been the victim of human trafficking that's usable for teenagers, like not something, as Gemma said, you have to be so careful about what other people's stories are, and that is those sorts of things that sometimes are just so hard to find when you're just looking for that right resource.
Yeah.
So schools certainly need support in that area.
Thank you. No, it's really practical, because as I said, we could sit and think you might need, but it might not hit the mark. So thank you. Yesterday, I guess, to sum up, Grace Tame wrote or said really loudly, silence allows the evil to persist. And I don't think there'll be much silence from your two schools and the students and communities. And so I appreciate that, because so for me to hear advice about, I guess, it's okay to do it with students, but do it in a safe setting. So thank you, because we need everyone to be quite loud about this. We'll hand over to Marg to say a farewell, but personally, Gemma and Ruth, thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Well, my goodness, I've been jotting down some notes, and I think the story of your founders and the power and influence of those founding stories and how they echo through your schools is really heartening, and gives you something to really hold on to. I think that's wonderful. I love the be bold, and I think we'll probably all love the be bold. And listening to you, there is boldness in what you're doing, and boldness in you're engendering boldness in your young people. The importance of role models and living authentically. I think young people can smell a rat very quickly. Supporting students, inspiring your students, educating ourselves. I think keep digging those trenches. That's a fantastic image that I'm going to go away with. You filled me with hope, and I think I'm speaking on behalf of everyone here that we're all filled with hope, and your students are incredibly lucky. Ruth, take up your point about resources. We're constantly thinking about that. We're just not quick to act because there's only a few of us working on it, but we are working on it. Thank you so much for what you've done, and thank you both, and Cindy, for giving up your time today. Just before we leave, our next conversation will be on the last Wednesday of next month, so the 28th of September, starting from 11:15, and it will be held with Merwin Foran from Hagar, Australia. ACRATH greatly admires the work of Hagar, and our supporters contributed to their call for aid when the Taliban took control of Afghanistan last year in 2021. We know this is going to be another great conversation. So thank you everyone today for your attendance, to Gemma and Ruth for your contribution, and all the best to us all. Thank you.